Welcome back to my catch-up, wrap-up little mini-series on this channel. For the past couple days, I've been posting videos wrapping up all of the books that I've read in the last 3 months. My videos covering the SFF books and the romance books that I read have already gone up. Today's video is going to be all of the contemporary and nonfiction books I read, and tomorrow, the last video, is going to be all of my childhood rereads. I became a very voracious reader over the last couple months, so I'm sure you understand my need to split all of these up. That would be way too many books to go through in one day. I think you believe me now. So I'm going to organize the books in this video, so I'm starting with the contemporary and then moving into the nonfiction. All of the timestamps will be down below if you want to skip around. So the first contemporary I read was Slay by Brittney Morris, and I freaking love this book. This is about a girl who designs a safe space for Black people through her online video game. But when something tragic happens in real life based on her video game, it's getting much more attention in the real world, and she could get into some major trouble. This obviously tackles issues with race, but specifically for young people in the online world, in the gaming sphere, which is notorious for being awful to really anyone, but also specifically to Black people. I really appreciated the issues that it brought up, while also being able to combat it and kind of make this really nice, safe space to explore what it would be like having this sort of video game made specifically for Black people. It was such a cool game design just in itself. It was so interesting. It definitely gave me some new insights into Black culture, which I am not at all familiar with, but it was so fascinating to learn about. And these characters were so sweet. It is written for a younger audience, so some of the dialogue is a little bit cringy for me, but at the same time, it seems very sincere. And as far as I know, being an old person, it seems believable that that's how teenagers talk and communicate now. So while it was kind of challenging for me, I still actually really appreciated it, and I think this would be fantastic for younger readers, in that case specifically, but for the general story and the general messages, any reader can pick this up and gain something from it. I literally was crying in my office while I was listening to it on an audiobook. I was at work, and I work in a lab where I need to be sterile, so I have like gloves on and a lab coat on and masks because everyone needs to wear masks, social distancing. There is still a pandemic going on, but I was fully in all of this protective garb, and I was just like sobbing at my desk. It's very hard to dry your tears when you need to be sterile. So that was a fun experience, but it really touched me. You get to see a lot of how this video game affects different people. It jumps perspectives to other people around the world who just play this video game and how they experience the world and what it means to them to have a safe space dedicated to letting themselves be themselves. It was beautiful and heart-wrenching and also just empowering and uplifting, and I enjoyed every minute of it. The pacing was perfect. The plot never felt like it was moving too quickly or too slowly, and you really get to spend time with these characters and understand their thought processes. There were some unbelievable moments with one of the characters at least, but I think it was meant to serve a purpose, and it did. It showed you a very specific outlook on Black culture that was needed in this book, even if it didn't quite match up with the character. But other than that, I think this is a really important book, as well as just being a really good book. It was very entertaining, and I was completely sucked in throughout it. The next book I picked up was Natalie Tan's Book of Luck and Fortune by Roselle Leung. This is about Natalie, who is estranged from her mother because her mother wouldn't support her career to be a chef. But when her mother passes away, she goes back home to San Francisco to kind of put things in order. But when she gets there, she realizes that the neighborhood that she grew up in is failing and fading. There is a bit of magical realism where she discovers that she has to cook 3 of her grandmother's recipes to bring everything back to life. However, I did not get that far in the book before I DNF'd it. I was not getting along with this writing style at all. It felt very meticulous and like this author was trying too hard. There were a lot of really silly metaphors that kept bringing me out of the story because it just felt too forced. Additionally, the plot was just really slow. I read a significant portion of this book and nothing was happening. She had like just arrived in San Francisco. There was nothing about cooking her grandmother's recipes or anything. It was just trying to go through her character and I guess develop her character, but I just couldn't care about her character at all either. I think part of that was the writing just kept me really distant from her because it was just so forced. And so while it dedicated all this time to try and build her character, that also meant nothing was happening in the plot, so I wasn't caring about anything, and I ended up just DNFing it. It was too slow and the writing was just getting on my nerves. I had better luck with the next book, which was Fake It Till You Break It by Jenn Wynn, and this is about two childhood friends whose mothers have always been trying to get them to get together, and they are so sick of it. They eventually decide to try and fake date for a couple weeks and then have the worst breakup ever so that their mothers will just get off their backs. This is obviously a very light and fluffy contemporary that's just super sweet in the moment and I really enjoyed it. However, I couldn't really tell you much about it now. I had to look up the synopsis to actually tell you what it was about, but I also have notes on it so I can tell you my thoughts, even if I don't fully remember them. I do remember really enjoying it and getting really sucked in. The writing wasn't the best. It was a little bit cheesy, but that's fine for a younger audience, and it just was so helplessly cute that I just didn't even care. While the characters didn't really stand on their own as being super unique, I really liked their relationship and the way that they interact. It was very adorable. They have a kind of bantery friendship that is just always so cute to read about, especially as it turns into love. I'm a sucker for childhood friends to lovers anyway, so there's that too. There's also a bit of hate to love, even though it's not fully hate. It's just cute and it's really entertaining, especially just for like a quick weekend read. It totally brought me back to my summers as a kid reading a lot of YA romance. It was the perfect little nostalgia trip for me, as well as having a POC rep, which I never got as a child, and I would have loved to see someone like me in those books that I was consuming as a kid. Checking my notes, apparently even while I was reading the book, I would forget the characters' names, so I don't know what that really says about the writing itself, but I don't feel quite as bad forgetting their names now, considering I had already forgotten them before. Then again, I just suck at book names in general. I can never remember characters' names, ever. But this was really sweet. It was very fluffy, and I would definitely recommend it if you have any young readers in your life, or if you just need a break and something entertaining. It's really nice to just lose yourself in a fluffy little romance once in a while. Next, I read the long-awaited 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I finally got around to this booktube darling. If you somehow don't know what this is about, I don't know where you've been, but it follows an old Hollywood star as she finally tells her life story to a seemingly random reporter, and she discloses all of her secrets of her 7 husbands and who the love of her life actually was. Everyone loves this book to death, and unfortunately, I don't. My main issue with this was the writing style. I hated it. It felt so cheesy and overly descriptive. It would talk about every single little piece of furniture in the room or exactly what everyone was wearing every day, and it was like, I don't care. There are just lists and lists of descriptions of what everything looks like, and I don't care. It was written so blandly that it didn't really immerse me in the world at all. It just made me think, oh, this author is trying to paint exactly what it looks like in her mind without doing a very creative job with it. Like in the beginning of this book, there are literally 4 paragraphs describing how this woman looks. And yes, while that might be part of her character, I'm just like, get to the point. I don't really care. I'm also not really a descriptive reader. I can never picture what characters look like in my head. They never have any faces. They're kind of just blobs of people in my head when I read. So having 4 paragraphs describing stuff that I'm sure I will forget in 2 seconds, and I did, it was just not a fun time for me. I also couldn't really get myself to care about the characters that much. In the beginning, I was basically not interested at all. Later on, it was more interesting and I was more into the story, but never so much that I felt like fully attached to Evelyn Hugo as everyone else seems to. I don't think I cried, and considering I am a very easy crier in books, that was surprising since everyone else seems to be like sobbing at the end, which I understand, I get it, but I just never really felt that connection with her to cause that kind of reaction in me. Normally it's very easy to get that reaction. it just didn't happen in this book. It was definitely an interesting story about this woman, this Hollywood starlet, but I think just for my tastes in particular, it wasn't really the book for me. I'm not really someone who gets into celebrity drama, and the writing style of this just kept taking me out. It was very, very annoying. So unfortunately, this was not my favorite book. I am sorry if you love it. I'm sure you do, because everyone loves this book, but just wasn't for me. I had another DNF, unfortunately, and that was The Key to Happily Ever After by Tiff Marcelo. What is it about me DNFing Filipino authors? I specifically am seeking them out because I am part Filipino, and I keep DNFing their books because I'm just not liking them. This is about a family of wedding planners. There are 3 sisters and they run this wedding shop, and past that I can't really tell you what else it's about. Apparently it's a romantic comedy about the De La Rosa family as they try and run their business and things go haywire, but I didn't get that. I didn't get quite far enough in the book to speak on any of that. I stopped at like 18%. It is a women's fiction book, which I had never read before, and so far it hasn't been a good experience. I was just bored again. There are so many things happening that I just didn't care about. I could never connect to any of these characters, and a lot of their interactions seemed very stereotypical. The characters themselves seemed stereotypical. Their personalities were put in this very specific bubble, and it was how they interacted as a family, and I just couldn't really believe it. They didn't really feel like real people to me, and I didn't care about them. They felt very flat, and the dialogue was very cheesy, as you would expect when everything is stereotypes. And as much as I am fascinated by wedding planning, this managed to make it really dry and really boring. Additionally, the writing was a little bit weird. The exposition just didn't quite make sense, and the blocking of the characters didn't really make sense. Like, I'm speaking in acting terms, I'm not an actor. Where the characters are in the room and where they had gone in the previous scene, just it didn't match up for me. I couldn't picture where they were, and then things were happening where like I didn't realize they were in this room, or I don't know if they were inside this apartment or outside of it or in the house, or I don't know what happened, but something happened and there was a weird interaction. Oh. There's also knocking on the apartment above me. I don't know what's happening. I got cut off, so I have no idea what I was saying about this book, but I was not engaged with it at all, so I DNF'd it. Also, I apologize if you can hear the stomping upstairs. I don't know what's happening up there. Next, I read A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, and this is set in basically our contemporary world, but with magical creatures like sirens and gargoyles. However, people fear and persecute sirens, so our main character has to find a way to hide her identity. She also has a sister who is trying to figure out who she is and why all these bad things seem to follow her everywhere. I guess this would technically be an urban fantasy, but it felt much more contemporary to me, so that's why I'm putting it in this video instead of my SFF video. And I have some mixed feelings about this book. I think thematically what it was doing was really cool, tying Black womanhood to something tangible and something as cool as sirens. I love sirens. But also I think a lot of it just wasn't really made for me, and so it went over my head. Part of it may be my fantasy brain coming in, but I never really fully understood the world. It's never explained to you, which is a good thing. There are no info dumps, but at the same time I was just kind of confused, and there were creatures in here that I didn't know if they were actually real things or not, and then sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't, and I had no way of telling because there are things like sirens and gargoyles, but there aren't like other things like unicorns, so I don't know where the line is. A lot of the social things were also only like partially explained, so I felt like I was always kept guessing at how this world would react to certain things. But I did still care about the characters and wanting to know what happens with the plot. There's a mystery with the sister that was very interesting, and I wanted to keep reading the book, even if I felt like I didn't fully understand the references that were in it or how the world actually worked and what was happening really. I did not like how it ended though at all. I thought that the ending to the plot was really, really weird, and a certain character deserved much more skepticism than they got in my personal opinion, and things wouldn't have worked out as perfectly as they did, but that's based on my limited knowledge of how this world works, considering I was never fully clear on it to start with. There were also some side characters that really didn't feel like they had any motivations. They were just villainous to be villainous, and that kind of didn't really sit well with me because it didn't make sense for her as a character. But there were other things about character that were done really well. There's a lot about finding yourself and discovering who you are and where you fit in that I thought was really well explored, and yet also it conflicted with other parts of the character development in other characters, so I'm just kind of iffy on this whole thing. The characters and the plot felt a little bit weird and jumbled to me, and the world was never fully explained, so I was just kind of confused the whole time. I don't know if that's because I'm not part of Black culture. Again, I don't have much of an experience with that, so I don't know if I would fully understand what it was trying to do specifically, or if it was just the writing style that didn't really articulate it in a way that I could understand. I'm not sure who's to blame, but I was just kind of left feeling wishy-washy about this book. I really loved the world. I loved getting to learn about all of the different creatures in this, and I think the social dynamics of that was really interesting. There was a run fair aspect to it that I also really enjoyed, and everything related to the water and siren magic was just right up my alley. But there were just so many mixed things in this book that I don't really understand how I feel about it very much. There were some really important lessons on race, and I think it could be beneficial for other readers who are more in the target audience, which I am probably not. Unsurprisingly. I did think it was an interesting book, and I think it will be very successful for the right people. And those are all of the contemporary books I read, so moving into my nonfiction, the first book I read was Quit Like a Millionaire. This is by Kristy, Shen, and Bryce Leung, and it's all about financial independence and retiring early, which sounds perfect for me. I want to retire right now. Unfortunately, I can't because I need to get my finances in order, hence why I read this book. It starts with some backstory about this author and how she grew up in poverty in China and how she became a millionaire. It then goes into a kind of step-by-step how-to on how to save up your money and become financially independent and be able to retire early. There are a lot of guidelines and instructions, so if what you're looking for is a manual, this is ideal. And I thought this was really helpful. A lot of it definitely went over my head because I don't know anything about finances and stocks and all of that, so that was a little bit stressful for me, but I think it was important for me to start thinking about it. It definitely made me reevaluate my finances and try to start saving for retirement so that I don't have to be working forever, basically. I would love to be able to retire early and just travel the world. That sounds amazing. I don't know if it'll be in the cards for me, but I can definitely think about it and know that it's a possibility now. There is some advice in here that is a little bit harder for me to implement, but I don't really see it as a very strict guideline on how I need to do this. I think the benefit in reading these books is kind of taking what you want from it and learning from other people's experiences and adapting that to your own lifestyle and what you want out of life, because that's really what's important. So I really appreciated this book for introducing me to a lot of new concepts and new things to think about and look into. And I think it could be a very helpful book for a lot of people because we're never taught this in school and it's very important. So I'm very grateful that I read this book and I would recommend it to others. I have a much better grasp on my finances than I did going into it. Next, I read Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and this is a sort of memoir in the form of a letter from this man to his young boy about what the world is like for Black men. This is a very prominent writer with a lot of really important works on race, and I think it was really important for me to pick this book up. It's definitely not particularly tailored for me, and I found it a little bit hard to understand some of the things that were mentioned in here, but that is not the fault of the book at all. I need to do some more research on my own. So while I couldn't always follow what was happening, it is a very personal glimpse into one person's experiences that is really important for people to see, even if they don't fully understand it. So I appreciate this book. It's definitely something that I need to look into more, but I don't think it affected me in the same way that it has a lot of people, and that's fine. It's not the fault of the book at all. It's just me. The last book, though, I absolutely freaking loved, and that was Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Discovers Her Superpower by Brittney Cooper. And this is a memoir thought piece on Black feminism and how Black women's anger is normally portrayed as something destructive and ugly, but it can be used for something good. This book describes her life as a Black woman and how her feminism developed and how she uses it to guide her decisions. She talks about different issues through the lens of her specific form of Black feminism, and it was a fascinating new perspective for me. I've never read any feminist books before, so all of it really was completely new, but I thought it was really interesting, in particular seeing it from a Black woman, and it's making me much more interested to pick up more books about feminism from POC authors and various forms of POC feminism in particular. So if you have any recommendations for that, please let me know. I want to do more reading on this because this was so interesting and so uplifting and empowering. I felt such strong emotions reading this that I will definitely need to go back and reread it. I read it over audio, so I'm sure a lot of things like went past me, and I want to read it in physical form and probably even get my own copy of it so I can highlight and tab things that I think are especially interesting. There are so many spots in the book that I just want to go back to and dive into more because there are so many interesting insights that I had never thought of before. Obviously, it's someone else's perspective, and I thought that it was fascinating and I want to know more about it. So I really truly loved every second of this book. It's probably my favorite nonfiction book of the year. And I don't normally read nonfiction, except this year I seem to be reading a lot more. I don't know why that is, but I've suddenly gotten into nonfiction, and this has been the best one so far. It was fantastic. Oh my gosh. Everyone should read it, especially if you're a feminist. Though a lot of it may not be new to you if you're very versed in feminism, unlike me, but for me, it was really eye-opening and just so empowering. I felt so strong reading this book, which was very interesting reaction to get from a book, but I loved it. I really, really did. I would highly recommend it. And those are all of the contemporary and nonfiction books that I read in the last 3 months during summer 2020. Again, I have one more video coming of all of my childhood rereads that will be up on my channel tomorrow, and you can always go back and check my previous 2 videos with all of my SFF books that I read and all of the romance books that I read in this time period. Again, if you have any recommendations for POC feminist books, please leave them below, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.